Hello everyone, welcome to Litera TV. I'm Caroline Hill, Editor-in-Chief of Legal IT Insider, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Chris Fowler, who's General Counsel of BT Technology and Transformation. Hi Chris.
Hi Caroline, how you doing?
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for joining me. Nice to see you.
And you?
So we're here to talk today, and we've got half an hour to gallop through many things, all to do with transformation. So you have overseen transformation of the internal legal team at BT. You have overseen transformation of the way that external legal services are delivered. And then you've also been part of BT at a time when the telecoms market has undergone extraordinary transformation. So I'm hoping that we'll get time to talk about that. But let's introduce you first properly. So you've been at BT since 1998.
Yeah, scary. And I guess probably my current role, I'm the sort of general counsel for the part of BT that effectively delivers technology for all of the customer facing businesses. So BT Technology effectively builds and runs our fixed and mobile networks. It runs the internal IT team. And also, probably most excitingly, it also is responsible for the research and development unit. We've got Adastral Park, which is effectively a whole bunch of brainy people who are designing the next generation of networking products, edge computing, and we've got one of the team who supports those guys up there around driverless cars and all the new technologies that are coming down and we hope to be using in the future. So it's a privilege really, because I get to work probably with some of the best and the most senior technologists in BT, and how they're trying to effectively design and deliver platforms across the whole country, and to millions of people.
And something that I guess we're all very familiar with, perhaps more, say, 5G. You're very much involved with BT 5G.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the team was central to helping BT launch that back in May of last year. Which was, we just announced yesterday that we've got to 30% of the population. And the mobile network effectively is, it's a new piece of technology. 5G effectively is the fifth evolution of the mobile networks. Yeah. And a big part of doing that is actually, getting out to the various sites that we've got, 19,000 of them across the country, and putting in the technology. And in some instances with 5G, we're focused on the big centres of population, but we're still growing the 4G network in places such as the north of Scotland and really rural areas where rural connectivity still needs to be sort of better than it currently is. Yeah. So big breadth of stuff. There's also, I've got the intellectual property team that works for me as well, dealing with sort of helping BT in terms of licensing the technology that we've got and that we acquire. I've got an environmental law team that works for me as well, because we're the 6th largest energy purchaser in the UK. So we need to make sure we do that right. And also a team that's looking at sort of our commercial arrangements with all of the big technology vendors we work with, as well as our joint venture that we have that effectively operates the towers and antennas which the mobile network sits on. So it's a lot of fun, never a dull moment, and you get to see technology at its real cutting edge.
And I've got you to thank for the fact that my children get to play Call of Duty.
Yeah, and that's the biggest, probably biggest change really, is how people of your kids' generation and my kids' generation are using networks relative to how we use it. Yeah.
Well, so I joke about that because I saw an interview you did with Crafty Counsel saying, obviously BT, I don't want to get too sidetracked because I've got so much else I want to ask you, but BT, obviously you've helped people stay connected at a really weird, extraordinary time. And I just was joking because I saw you talk about how you see the spikes when when people are when they're supposed to be homeschooling, but actually they're on they're playing Call of Duty.
Absolutely. One of the benefits of running an internet network is you get to see, the sources of the traffic. And quite frankly, our biggest challenge is keeping up with effectively an insatiable demand for data. It kind of grows by 30% every year, and it's probably because everybody in our house now has got at least 2 or 3 connected devices and wants to effectively consume more content and more video.
Yeah. So tell me about, so the legal team now, I think, has over 400 people globally. You've got an annual budget of 70 million. You joined since 1998. So A, BT has changed massively, and B, the legal team. I thought it'd be really fun before we sort of start talking about, you know, bringing to present day changes when there's been a lot of transformation just over the last couple of years. But I just thought, you know, what would you say? Describe then and now, just very quickly. Just
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess then the legal team was a small central kind of unit, and then big teams in the individual sort of business units, which probably were not particularly well connected. Didn't really probably know everybody, definitely didn't talk to everybody. Were probably, we hadn't really kind of, we're mostly focused, I guess, on two very simple things, which was doing transactions and fixing transactions that had gone wrong. I think in that time, clearly, you know, the world has embraced the internet, you know, a lot more, and mobile communications has become more part of everyday life, as has Wi-Fi. We've launched a TV channel. We have effectively, you know, acquired EE in 1996. Which was the largest UK mobile operator. So the nature of the legal department has changed massively. It's smaller, a lot smaller than it was when I first joined. And I'd say it's far more customer facing than it's ever been. It has to be. And it's far more aligned to the strategic priorities of the organization. You know, if you'd have said to me when I first joined, you know, what are the strategic priorities? I probably would have wondered what the hell why that was important. And I think now, you know, kind of we have to focus the resource we've got, and we have to perform to the best of our abilities on supporting those things that are the most important for the business, and be on the front foot for those. No one thanks us if we kind of sit here and admire a problem. They kind of want us to be on the front foot and stop things happening.
See, I've always seen, so I mean, I'm going to come on to the most recent transformation. I've always seen BT as pretty much, you know, in terms of legal teams, I think you've always been pretty far ahead. Like, so I've written about BT for a long time, as you know, and I think it was in a good few years ago, you were using, you know, using LPOs, you were sort of really sort of looking at triaging the work that was coming into the department. I feel like you've always been, not that you were saying that this wasn't the case, but I think you've always kind of looked at doing things a bit differently, which has kind of stood you apart. But so I think that the past, but I guess every team has to continuously reinvent itself, every good team. And so I think it's really been, say, the last 2 years, there's been a period of intense transformation, and that, I guess, what's driven that?
Yeah, it goes back further than that. I think it goes back to probably the big watershed for me was 2008, when, you know, the organisation had a profit warning, and therefore, you know, we had as an organisation as a whole, we had to change and do things differently. But I think one of its great strengths is it realizes it needs to kind of constantly reinvent itself to stay relevant. You know, so if you look at, and I think there's lots of parallels with the legal industry. You know, we used to sell time. You know, I don't know if you're old enough to remember, it's good to talk. Yeah.
Oh, you flatter me.
You know, that we used to sell time. The longer you were on a call, the more money we made. The reality is now we sell, you know, kind of converged connectivity packages. The likes of my kids don't make phone calls like I did. They spend their time on Snapchat and on TikTok, you know. They want to play a fat fee per month. That's a very different model, and a model which I think ultimately has delivered more benefit and lower costs for consumers.
Yeah. So you've had to, so in 2000, so 2008, but then 2018, I think BT announced plans to cut 13,000 jobs, and they said they're going to save 1.5 billion in costs.
Yeah.
And then it coincided, you also brought Sabine Chalmers came in to replace Dan. She obviously joined from Anheuser in April 2018. And then, so I think, and then you said then that BT Legal was going to realign itself with the business. Is that right? You were going to be more closely.
Yeah. I think we've been on you know, transformation is not a linear thing. You know, you kind of have to deal with things as and when they hit you.
Yeah.
I think Dan had already put us on that course.
Yeah.
When he was with us in 2013. And I think Sabina has sort of come in at a time when the business needs to sort of carry on down that path. Possibly, that the external environment has changed a bit since then. And I think, kind of the big thing that's probably changed now is we're having to invest millions in things like fibre and 5G, which are probably as yet somewhat slightly unproven technologies. But at the same time, we're having to manage a legacy infrastructure, a copper-based network that gradually we need to sort of move people off, because as we can get them onto the new platforms, effectively it means we can provide a better customer experience. You can manage whether someone's got a problem on a piece of fibre a lot better than you can if their copper in their sort of socket in their wall corrodes, and they can't use their broadband. So I think that the challenge that the organisation has, which is a little bit like the legal industry as a whole, is we need to kind of keep adapting and modify what we sell. We're far more consumer focused, I think, now than we've ever been, because businesses are virtualizing. You only have to look at most high streets. There's a lot less shops on them than there were. We used to sort of, a big focus used to be on what we sold to those customers. But those customers are virtualizing, moving their apps into the cloud, moving them into the data center. So it's changing the nature of the business that we're getting in.
So tell me about, so you've introduced lots of, so you personally have, you used to do pretty much everything, didn't you? So you've given up a few roles. You've created, you've done
the most challenging job I had was, without doubt, being the COO of the legal team. It's also probably the most rewarding, and I did that before I came into my current role. And I think one of the challenges of being the COO, of being someone who's trying to drive change, is ultimately you're a bit of an agitator. You've got to do things that maybe people don't do naturally. But equally, it was a real privilege, because you get to run a business unit and get to make changes on things that kind of that see the sort of passing of time. And the biggest thing that I probably picked up, Caroline, was legal operations used to be something that people did in their spare time. And actually I realized that if we were going to kind of really change things, we needed to properly have people dedicated to it. And our legal ops team has grown. It's about 15 people now. They need to have clear accountabilities, and we need to have a clear strategy. And I think that's the big thing that's changed, is that we've kind of industrialized that whole business management change function, whether it's been Dan or Sabina, because they realise that they're integral to driving and delivering, kind of long-term business improvement.
Yeah, okay. So you brought obviously David Griffin in. You've brought a bunch of new people, haven't you? You brought Dave Hart this summer. So describe a little bit about. So David Griffin came in from Deutsche Bank. He's head of legal government systems and change. This summer, Dave Hart came in as new legal transformation director. And obviously you've grown the legal ops team. So tell me about, so what is it that you're trying to achieve with, obviously you want to make sure that so legal ops is dealt with in the way that perhaps it's traditionally been handled pretty badly within in-house.
I think the key thing is, kind of what's the operating model? Let's have a conscious operating model. Most legal functions have, evolved. They haven't been designed. And if you take someone like, David, who came in on the systems side, what he's brought is a professionalism around implementing sort of technology. And kind of when he came in, if I was honest with you, we were primary cheerful amateurs, really. David came in and introduced proper requirements capture, proper user testing, proper kind of change control mechanisms, so that when requirements did change, it was properly tracked. And as a result, he's been able to implement things quicker. I wouldn't say they'd be done as quick as he would like, but he's really driven that. And then kind of what we've tried to drive as well is more consistency about how we manage our external budget. 40% of the resources available to us are still spent on external spend. You can always be smarter at that. And so I think the key thing is running the function like any other business unit, and really trying to drive to make it the best it can be to service the business as it changes. And things will change. Things will change again in the next 6 months. We'll have to modify it.
Because you didn't know it originally. I mean, what did I say? So you didn't originally have as clear a concept of your budget, did you? We now say quite clear, categorically, you've got 70 million budget, but actually it wasn't that clear before, was it? That you went through a whole fairly recent process in order to really ascertain what your costs are, etc., and really sort of run as a business, which sounds logical, but actually, you know,
I think we came from a situation whereby, you know, the legal team was disparately funded. You know, there was lots of federated functions, and we never really were able to count anything other than internal bodies. And that's never a great place to be, because, you know, when there's an efficiency challenge, that's the first place you look. And I think by bringing everything together, you can not only offer people the chance to do different things, but you can set a baseline as to where you're at. And you can work out, okay, you know, where are you going to take it from here? And probably more importantly, it's enabled us to effectively be judged by whatever that in-year number is, not be judged on the number of heads we've got, or some other kind of, you know, arbitrary assessment. Because at the end of the day, you know, if you're in a business like ours that's heavily sort of, you know, kind of capex, you know, dependent, you will have to justify your resources every year. I think when, you know, Dan was here, it was pretty much a 5% year-on-year efficiency challenge. I think sort of since Sabina's been here, we're kind of more into 2 to 3 year medium-term plans, but they still have to be stretching, and we still have to deliver on things, which ultimately mean things are going to be sort of, you know, somewhat smaller than when we started out. And that's kind of the way of the world in the nature of the business we're in.
So, and also, so you've been doing things smarter. So I want to go on to the arrangement you've got with DWF. So obviously we talked about internal. So in addition to looking at the way the internal team is structured, you then also thought very much about how you go to outside guideline, outside advice. And so so I think it was last year, wasn't it? You put in place the 5-year managed services agreement with DWF. So talk about the process behind that. So I'm a big fan, as you know, of managed services agreement. So I'm always, I think, as I've expressed to you, I was quite surprised when I speak to General Counsel or whoever it might be, head of legal operations, and they're quite proud of like knocking off a few quid off the billable hour, and I'm sort of ranting and raging about why you not. But it's not actually a simple, you know, and it's still not common, right? So you have got a few examples in the US of these kind of arrangements, but actually it's not from the earliest examples. It's not really taken off. So I'd be fascinated to hear kind of how it came about and how it's working.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so historically, obviously, we've had a relationship with what was Axiom, what now is Factor. So we kind of been an adopter of managed services for some time. I think probably we got to a point in terms of the genesis of why we went about it by thinking, actually, year-on-year incremental savings are not that exciting, and they're quite demotivating to the team. And so I think what we wanted to do was do something a little bit more long-term, a little bit more strategic, but also what we wanted to do was, you know, kind of be able to do something that delivered some value back to us, you know, in terms of process, in terms of access to systems that otherwise we couldn't have invested in ourselves. And I think, you know, one of my observations is that, you know, there's people out there such as Elevate and such as Axiom, and the big four are coming into play now. And so, you know, kind of managed services is still a relatively early stage offering, I would say. But I do agree with you, right? And I look at some organisations such as BCLP, such as DWF, such as Eversheds, and they clearly see the benefit of this. And from our perspective, if someone's prepared to take on a portfolio of work and have a strategic discussion with us, that means it's not dependent upon two people's relationship. Actually, it's a long-term relationship which you need to make work, and you can deliver additional value from. And so, you know, the big win for us really is, if you look at DWF, they've acquired Mindcrest. That brings a different project-based mentality, It brings a data-driven approach. You marry that with a traditional law firm, I think you've got a pretty interesting proposition from my perspective. But it's still, I think, and one of the things that we discovered in the process is it's still a relatively early stage market. But I think I'm quite excited by where the Big Four are going as well, because one of the things that they offer is the ability to kind of do transformation in their sleep. Yeah. Right. And I think one of the real challenges of this area is you can take on board a service, but what you really want is someone who can change the fundamental nature of the service. Yeah. And that's where I think the opportunity is for the Big Four, because if you look at their other broader service offerings, transforming the service from something the as is to the to be is kind of what they're about.
Yeah, that's really interesting. How much? So obviously you had. So it's a team of 43 in this case that have gone to DWF. They cover insurance and real estate. That's right, isn't it? And one of the things I was curious about was the DWF, and I think the Big Four fall into this category as well in terms of what they're offering. So they make a big play of, we can provide technology. So you've already mentioned project management, but so they say, well, one of the reasons when DWF floated, they were saying, right, we can invest 10 million in technology, and in terms of the managed services offering that they provide, they're very, very much saying we can deliver it in a way that you can't. So what is it? I mean, can you give us any details on how that affects you, and what because obviously we a lot of our audience are tech, they're interested in tech. So what can you share in terms of the way
a real obvious example is clearly we were running on a system with our previous claims management, which was probably getting end of life. With DWF, I think it's been in the public domain, have invested in Peppermint. It's an Office 365 application. They've bought another broader applications. We're talking to them about how we can sort of have real-time access to the entire sort of range of the work that they're doing for us, so that we don't have to constantly send emails back and forward. And I think kind of the big challenge for that, being completely candid, is transition is quite hard if you're going to move a portfolio of work, and data transfer is really hard. But once you've got that, then you can start to really think about how you change what it's got. And that's where I kind of we're having a conversation at the moment about how we can get their Mindcrest offering to do our lease reads for us. And I think the internal team will be over the moon if we can get that to work, because that's not been something that's been one of their favorite things to do. And that's by utilizing some of the tools that they've used elsewhere for data mining, such as Raven, or anything like that. So I think kind of one of the great things for me about kind of the DWF thing is that they've got this Mindcrest capability, and they're kind of agnostic to the software. It's more about kind of the business rules and what are you trying to achieve from where you're at, and then what's the application to fit that kind of works for us.
That's really brilliant. Yeah, no, fascinating. And then it frees up. I mean, I'd love to talk more about that, but we're not going to have time. But so I think it's fascinating that you'll be able to use Peppermint effectively through DWF. If that works, and then it frees up the rest of your legal team to do the high level strategic stuff. Because isn't it? So you think that a big chunk, it's a big chunk, and I can't remember the number of your routine work is now being done by elsewhere, isn't it? You are now able to focus on the really strategic stuff.
Yeah, well, I guess what we're driving at is, the legal team now, kind of is probably split into discrete teams that are all focused on, the discrete business units. So, I'm accountable to the technology business unit, as my other colleagues are. And I think probably where we're going now is, let's use the resource we have got to really focus on the big issues that are driving the company's performance and are really linked to success, such as 5G, such as kind of how we deploy mobile networks and the rest of it. So because fundamentally we think the legal team should be focused on the things that really matter to the organization, and I think the reason that's important is because one, I think it's just more enjoyable to be involved in the stuff that's interesting. Kind of we had our results call yesterday, and it's great when you hear the CEO and the CFO mention stuff that you're personally involved in. But it's not. But it's great for engagement as well. you know, generally speaking, I can hand on heart say that the team we have got now is a lot happier than the team that I joined or the team from 5 years ago, because they're doing more interesting things. And it was fascinating when our new CEO came in and met us and asked us to go around the table and say, you know, what do you do? What projects are you working on? And he kind of turned around and said, you know what, you've all got really interesting jobs. You're all doing stuff that's really interesting. And that's kind of what gets you out of bed in the morning. You know, when you see what you're doing and you see it kind of in the papers, or you see it referred to in analyst briefings, kind of, you know, you give the extra 10% because it's fun.
Yeah, I bet. And so fine. So and when you in terms of when you are looking at we talked about the stuff just to track you back to the sort of the you know the legal advisor stuff. So you've done the DWF thing. You've sorted out the internal stuff. You've done the DWF managed service thing. You've actually, I don't think we need to dwell on this, but you also did a panel review which cut the panel from 40 to 15, and there's very much a focus on, you know, leveraging relationships, which is really interesting to me in an age when obviously, you know, perhaps relationships that end up being on the back foot. Actually, you're saying, do you know what, it's really important to us in terms of you getting this, you know, really good service delivered, and then really understanding your strategic objectives. But so what are you seeing? So what we've talked about Elevate, we've talked about BCRP, we've talked about Eversheds. There's lots of firms starting to look at, and you've talked about the big four. What are you seeing in terms of the way that that firms are now looking to deliver their work in a different way? What are you seeing, and perhaps maybe even a tech-driven way, we're on topic, but what are you seeing, what's impressing you that you're seeing in the market?
Yeah, I think the stuff that's out there that's really interesting is where you can take, you know, the service delivery and change the nature of it in terms of what comes back to you, you know, and that's why I like you know, kind of the stuff that we get from the managed service providers, because it's not just, we're not just getting bodies, we're not just getting output, you know, we're getting insight from kind of the systems that they use to deliver work, the systems they use to triage work. I think at the moment, right, we're at a bit of a tipping point, right, because there's lots of solutions out there, but actually none of them really talk to each other. And it feels a little bit like, you know, we're trying to build a legal platform, and it's a little bit like going to B&Q and trying to build a house. We'll get there in the end, but it's going to take a hell of a long time. So what I'm quite excited about are those organizations who are trying to build things where you take something end to end. You know, you take, at the moment, probably, you know, litigation and commercial contracts probably most easily lend themselves to that, because a defined starting point and the start ending point. But I can't help but thinking that, you know, kind of there is more that we could be doing with legal data. You know, and it's the legal data that interests me more than the tech. The tech enables the legal data to be exploited. So I think, you know, but equally, you know, we are in this relatively early stage market. It's the differences, it's the different levels of entrepreneurial ability that you see at Legal Geek that kind of makes it interesting. If it was all the same and just like, you know, dominated by 2 or 3 big platforms, I don't think it would be as fun or as exciting as it is. So you've got to be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, because there is a big platform play, particularly, I mean, there's two sort of parallels in there. So there's the vendors, that there's a lot of platform play amongst the vendors who are either plugging together the best of breed, or they're actually acquiring, as we know, a lot of the vendors are acquiring. And then within the law firms, they're sort of trying to create their own, as you say, more end-to-end approach, and perhaps being a bit more saying, well, we don't have to, we could be agnostic, as you said. You know, there's so many different approaches, but I think at the end of the day, they're trying to create the effect that you need, which is a much more, you know, much less point solution, trying to build a house. I like that analogy a lot. Like, so where they're trying to make it simpler.
But one of the things I would say is, you know, kind of being now the general counsel of a business that, you know, is a technology organization, is I do feel that kind of, you know, we're still, as a legal industry, some way behind. Where they
You've got 1 minute. Tell me.
No. I mean, and if you look at
you're
how
in telecom, so you see cutting edge. So tell me what you see.
If you look at the way, you know, they're building systems, it's very much, well, you know, what's the customer journey? You know, how do you get something from an order to it being provisioned? How do you deal with a problem when someone's got, you know, needs fixing? And I think we probably need to move to a mindset where things are a little bit more, you know, kind of the customer journey, we start and finish with that. And if we can get there, then I think things could get quite interesting, because otherwise you end up with, you know, effectively a bit of a Heath Robinson set of applications, some of which are used, some of which are not, but none of which really talk to each other.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm so sad. I'm going to have to leave it there. I'd love to carry on chatting to you, but we've run out of time, and I just want to say thank you so much for joining me, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
No problem, Caroline. Take care.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye.
Bye.